Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi guys, welcome. I haven't done an intro in a really long time, which is
I don't feel like we ever do intros,
good
so
to
that's
put me
really good
to
of you.
work. No, I've done one.
Actually, a little hint, we were on our way. We were driving after we dropped off the kids, and we were practicing your intro. So no pressure, Katie, but here you go.
Well, I mean, now there's a little pressure, but so welcome back. Welcome back on that note. I feel like I'm turning red. But today we have Cassie, who's been with us before on the podcast, and we also have Stacey with us today as well. And so they are psychotherapists here at Napanee. They both have their own individual practices, but right now they are working collectively under Napanee Psychotherapist. So psychotherapy, sorry you guys, fucked it up. I was doing so good. But so Cassie, you have introduced yourself already. And Stacey, maybe you want to introduce yourself just a little tidbit, I guess, about how long you've been doing it,
what are your
focus
qualifications?
is. Yeah,
Sure.
Sell us on yourself. Not that you have to, because we already know everything about you.
Also, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
This is the part that I was like, this is the weird part. Then it gets good. Then it gets easy.
After this, it gets easier. Okay. So I've been in private practice for about 6 years, I think, coming from addiction mental health before that. So public sector.
Okay.
I teach also at St. Lawrence College. I have my master's in counseling psychology, behavioral science grad. So kind of fast tracked into that.
Did you do all that through Kingston and Queens, or
So I went to Queens, and then I went to St. Lawrence College, fast track. Then I went to Mohawk College. Then I did an addictions diploma. Yeah.
So you've been a little bit everywhere.
I have been. I always
awesome.
say I'm kind of a professional student, but I am hopefully done.
Yeah.
Just taking training.
Except you're doing a training right
Except for I'm doing that.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
But that's great.
I'm
It's
not getting
ongoing.
marked.
Which I love, though. Like, you never stop growing.
Yes.
Which I think I can definitely.
And now you're on the teaching side, and
Yes.
you're teaching as well right now. Is that correct?
Me?
You're doing classes and things because
No, just the workshops.
Your workshops.
So I get my teaching
Okay.
bucket filled that way.
that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And then in terms of bringing your practices together, how did you guys connect?
We've kind of been doing this
Yes.
since we connected.
Pretty much.
When I made the decision to jump over to private practice when I was still at the hospital, I reached out to Stacey because we had known each other when I worked at the health center, and you were at addiction and mental health services.
Okay.
Yeah. And so our paths have crossed a lot. And so I reached out just to say, like, I don't want to step on toes in Napanee.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of blossomed from there.
And I don't think that I let you step on my toes.
No.
I kind of pulled you onto my toes.
come on,
yes,
Katie.
I was very lonely.
But I mean,
That's nice to have.
nice
Yes.
to have that
Yeah, it
support,
was.
especially I'm sure for you that was a big transition and a big decision to make that move.
Yeah.
So to have somebody that kind of, do you guys work together in terms of like mentorship? Do you guys consult each other or seek out advice and work together?
All
that
all
way?
the time.
All the
Amazing.
time.
That's so
It's
nice.
nice that you guys have, like, debriefing together.
like a work
and be able
bestie.
to, like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible. I
We
love
get
that.
lots of texts back and forth. Usually it's like, no need to respond, just venting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
we should do that together.
We already
no
do
need
that.
to respond.
We already do that, and even if one of us did say no need to respond, we would still be
Kaylin, I'm having a breakdown. You
no need to respond.
okay, I'm in IKEA. I'll be like right there.
That is so wonderful. So in terms of like what Cassie's talked about before, we kind of did a quick summary, and I really recommend going back to watch that episode. It was one of my favorite episodes.
Definitely,
that we've
it's
done.
episode 9 for all of you listeners.
And there's 15 today, I think.
15 today. Wow. So thank you for returning back to our 15.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, no problem. And then psychotherapy. So in terms of what is it, we talked about that you offer workshops. And I know one thing that you wanted to just jump into is the types of therapy, which we did kind of briefly touch on.
No, but before you get ahead of yourself, Caitlin.
I'm not.
I do want to hear what therapy means to the both of you, because I know it's a little different for you both, I think. Like, I read your little pinned bios on your Instagram, and I would love for you guys to share that as, you know, somebody that's on the other side of the chair or the table or the couch, you know, what would be therapy to you guys?
To each of you. Don't copy each other's answers.
I know, that's a hard one. I don't know. We talk about this often where it feels, I don't know, it just feels like it just comes. I don't know.
I feel like for me, therapy is really about hopefully setting a kind of a setting for somebody to be normalized, that
Right.
a lot of what brings people to counseling, they feel is so beyond something that we've heard of, and we want to just normalize and like humanize the process. So to me, it's like, I don't know. And I think we both share that emotions are normal, and we have had a ton of lessons that we've been taught in our lives, and just trying to break things down in the resiliency of so many people. It is incredible what people go through and keep on kicking. And so celebrating and building on, to me, I think that's therapy. Therapy is to help somebody take them where they are, find their strengths, and like grow.
Would you recommend therapy to anybody who, so let's say, for example, there's somebody at any point in their life that maybe they feel like they haven't been through a lot of maybe large significant things, or maybe they minimize things and say, you know, like I had a healthy upbringing, or I had a, you know, stable parents, or whatever.
I don't understand why I
whatever
feel
that
like.
looks like this. Like, what would you say in those instances in terms of, you know, maybe somebody who feels like they're seeking out therapy, they are curious about seeking out therapy, but maybe are dismissing those feelings because they haven't been through something that feels really like heavy or significant. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the two words that come to mind for me just around what is therapy are connection and privilege. And I think so many people that come to therapy, like we create a different connection with every single person that we see. And some of that is that space to come in and talk when you feel like maybe you don't have the ability to do that elsewhere.
Right.
Or for some people it might be connection in the sense of like, you can help me with this grief or this other difficult thing. And then the other word that came to mind is privilege, right? And I think as therapists, just in general, I think the thing that has drawn us to each other is that we both view it as a privilege to be on that side of the room. Wow. But for people who come in feeling like they maybe don't have the right to be there is kind of what you're describing. I think we've been conditioned a little bit that way. Like, you know, even the whole notion of, and I might get some backlash for saying this, but big T and little t traumas. So a trauma is a trauma. Right. And so it's like, there's, if you feel like it's a trauma, it's a trauma. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes in, right? Where it's like, I have these feelings and I don't know why. And that's something that I think we would want to explore with that individual. Right.
I think too that like people are so, and it's what you said, conditioned, that there's so much comparison that happens like in every aspect of people's lives right now, especially even through like social media. And we talked about social media last time and all those things. So I think that level of comparison as well, and just feeling like,
I think the notion of like, love Joe Rogan, but it's, you know,
Joe's a big fan.
He's
like, are you
honest
talking shit about Joe Rogan?
I'm a big podcast lover. I love Joe Rogan, but you know, it's like, get up and get the fuck going and get on with it. And it's just like, yeah, but not today. Like I, through therapy myself, I've learned, you know, like my therapist, will just be like, no, you know what? If you want to lay in bed and eat a bowl of cereal or the whole box of cereal, like do it, because
it's more about validating.
Right now you just need to be in tune with yourself. It's okay. And like for a long time, I mean, I was going to the gym a week after Gwen died, and I look back at it now and I'm like, what the fuck? But realizing, you know, it's okay to have those days where you're just not doing a whole lot of things.
I feel like that was like,
you know, and I think that's where we go back to, we're taught so much resilience, you know, to be strong and get on with it, where I guess people are kind of nervous to seek out and be like, I don't know why I feel like this, but I feel like this.
And I think people are conditioned to believe that they had a great upbringing and therefore there should be no reason you need therapy. And I always say to clients, like, have you ever felt a loss of control or a loss of power?
Every day.
So
today specifically,
if you felt that at some point in your life, maybe bullying, maybe, and again, the big T, little T, they try to get us away, but I think it does conceptualize. Sometimes a little T trauma can have significant impact. So who's to say that, come on, that's not therapy worthy? If it affects you, it makes you, you know, sad, or you're ruminating, or you're not able to function, go to therapy. It's a, you know, it's something that's valued and can help.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing with trauma therapy is you're not focusing so much on what happened as the impact of it. Right.
Exactly.
And so just like Stacey said, right, we look at, if something's impacting you, that's what we want to pull apart, right? We're not going to spend a whole lot of time teasing out every minute detail of what actually happened. But
you know me, and you know that's really hard for me.
But trauma is.
You go there. You certainly go there sometimes, right? But at the end of the day, we want to look at the effect of what happened. And so for that individual who's coming in being like, I feel all these things, I don't feel like anything significant has happened. I think there's all these pieces we would explore around conditioning. Who was there, right? I think the difference between two people who also maybe experienced the exact same thing in the exact same way, but one person has a different resource base than the other.
It's like
then you can help people make sense of it.
Alcoholic parent, the child doesn't drink, the other child's an alcoholic. It can go both ways for sure. And then I just have one other question. It's kind of like a selfish question, I guess, because you guys are here right now.
We're gonna utilize
put you to work. Send me your bill after. But I'm just curious to know, so like, if do you feel like being like trauma therapists, do you feel like there's always like, obviously people sometimes feel depressed, obviously people sometimes feel anxiety, do you feel like it's ever just like, it's hard to word this question in the way that I mean it, but do you feel like it's always tied to something, whether that person knows it or not? Does that make sense? Like, I don't know, like when you're trying to like dig deeper with clients and you're trying to, they're having emotions, whether that be anxiety, and you're trying to pinpoint that, like, do you feel like, do you always get to that part of it? Do you know what I mean? Or do people sometimes feel like, I don't really know how to word this. Like,
where are you going?
I don't know. Like, I just mean like, I don't know, like in your experience, like, I feel like I'm wasting a lot of time.
No, you're not. No.
But like in your experience, I mean, like when people are coming in and they're not feeling good, or they're not feeling right, or they're feeling anxious, or they're feeling like they're at a point in their life that feels maybe like a crossroad. Do you feel like, do you recognize that those emotions are tied to trauma always, or are they sometimes not? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I hope. Help me out.
I think in those situations, I think sometimes you can try to find a connection.
Right.
Sometimes I don't get caught up in trying. Sometimes I want to just regulate the body first, or just create simple kind of connection to see if we can calm the body down. If we need to get to the roots, we'll get there.
Right.
Eventually, I do psychoeducation just to kind of unpack some pieces.
Right.
And sometimes we don't get right to the roots immediately. It takes time.
I guess what I'm asking is like
peeling an onion.
It totally
there's
is.
probably
Therapy
a lot
is
of parts
absolutely
sometimes that it's not super linear, that like if I go in, I'm like, hey, I'm an open book and blah, 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 and this, and this made me feel like this. But I'm sure it's not always the case that people can have a much harder time getting to maybe that end goal that people set for therapy. Yeah. And how do people know what goals to set for therapy? Like, how do you come about to getting those goals and knowing what people want to get out of therapy? Does that make sense?
Sometimes they don't. I would say some people come in and exactly as you said before, they just feel off, or they don't feel themselves and they can't quite pinpoint it. Right. Or there's no obvious to them precipitating factor of some sort. And so we just look at a whole myriad of things. Yeah. How they deal with their emotions, how they connect with themselves, how they connect with others.
Triggers.
Their resource space.
So when you think about those two words that you thought of, right, that connection, maybe that's just almost what people are looking for as well, is just being able to connect with someone else and themselves.
To know that they're not feeling this way because there's no such, crazy or... Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Joey's looking at me like I have 4 heads.
Get to the point.
Get to the point.
Sorry, everyone.
No, I think that's really good. I think those were really good questions.
I don't know.
And I'm happy you asked
it's hard
them.
to express.
No, I get it, because isn't Stacey and you being in behavioral psych as well, what are the 4 reasons behind behavior? Or is there 4 or 3?
I think there's 3. I don't know now. I'm not sure.
It's avoidance.
Oh, yes. So avoidance, like, are we looking at like from a behavior perspective?
Yeah, like a little bit. Yeah.
Why don't you help us out and tell us all 3, and then we can dive deep.
I forget. Avoidance.
See, and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about it probably from a different conceptualization. I always look at behavior as communication. Okay. So behavior to me now is communication. So I always look at what is the function of the behavior.
Yes.
What are we functioning? So are we trying to avoid something? Yes. Escape? Are we numbing it?
Attention, escape, access, and sensory needs is what it comes up as.
A lot of the reasons why we behave a certain way is, well, not just because of other like circumstances, but because of attention, escape, access, or sensory needs, like addiction or that kind of thing.
I like a lot of attention.
And a lot of the time.
Which are all driven by emotions.
Yeah, which are all driven by your emotions, guys. We all have emotions, absolutely. This is good. This is good already. Okay, well, let's dive into a little bit of types of therapy. Right. To take the lead on the first one, motion-focused therapy.
Okay, there you go.
So emotion-focused, we're going to look at how people recognize their emotions. So there's two processes that we would look at, an emotional interrupter or a self-critic.
Okay.
And so self-critic is sort of self-explanatory, right? Are we really honing in on how terrible we are? But there is this other sort of subset of a self-critic where we look at placing really high standards on yourself, right? That leads to sort of chronic fatigue, burnout, never feeling good enough.
I have that.
Emotional self-interrupters are going to be the people who do anything they can to avoid emotions, dismiss them, minimize them. Right. I'm not worthy of coming to therapy because the things that I've endured are not, that bad.
Right.
These types of things.
And you almost believe
right?
it. Like it's you will actually, your mind will start
I
to believe
should
those
get
things.
over this by now.
Like
I shouldn't feel
self-sabotaging.
angry. Those types of things. And so we look at things from that perspective, and then it morphs into more sort of inner child type work, and deeper parts type work.
Wow. That's good.
I've never
feel
felt
like, is that
like I need therapy more. Listening back, I'm like,
that's good. Check. I'm very proud of you. This is a big deal for her going to therapy.
Yeah,
so.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's really good.
I know.
It's really good.
It is.
Cognitive processing therapy. So CPT, I think this is a very known one, isn't it?
Yeah. We both do CPT?
I do. I don't do it very often.
Yeah.
I've done training on it, but
Maybe I'm thinking
what is it, and in what circumstance do you feel like you don't do it because it's not, there's other more effective approaches that you have?
it's not my go-to, literally, but it's one of those ones where I was told to do it once for a situation where I was being funded for the therapy.
Right.
But it seems very CBT oriented in a lot of ways, but it's more processing through.
Cognitive means brain. Fancy word for brain.
Yeah.
Thinking?
I think for both of us, we like to go deeper. And like Stacey, you do a lot of EMDR.
EMDR
and so both of us have this in our toolbox and we draw from it occasionally, but not our go-to, but more cognitively based.
Absolutely.
Like reprocessing cognitions related to the trauma.
Like stuck points.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we were just saying this morning that I guess it was my realization that I do so many different kinds of therapy, but I don't even know that they have
meanings or
like labels to them anymore, because you don't actually, I don't think like, oh, I'm doing cognitive process. Oh, now I'm going to switch over to, I just do
but you
what
probably have been doing it for so long too that you have kind of morphed into like your own lesson plan almost, right? Of what strategies that you can pick from each part of these different resources and find a plan that works best for you and also the client, right? Yeah.
So you mentioned EMDR. I myself have done this before.
Yes.
Would you explain what that looks like?
So EMDR is a therapy often kind of used for trauma, but can be used for anything. Anxiety, it can be used for grief, it can be used single incidents or repeated trauma. It really looks at desensitizing. So we do, kind of pick the worst part of a situation, and then the goal is to desensitize it. So we reprocess by bilateral stimulation. So you can either cross your arms and tap on either side, kind of going across the right and left side of the brain.
Wow.
Or use tappers. So in my clinic, I have the light bars and hand tappers and audio tappers. So our goal is to desensitize first. So it's exposure almost to the situation with almost the distraction, to then reprocessing. So a lot of the time we store our trauma memory in the original time of the trauma. So if you were abused as a child, you're going to process that situation from that lens of a young person. So it's often, like an error thought. It's a cognitive error. So we will reprocess it with what we know now. So a lot of the EMDR I do is like gold to kind of help reprocess, so somebody can see something that it was terribly traumatic and causing like panic or like sweating or whatever the emotion, and body sensations as well. We also focus on where do you feel the trauma in your body,
right?
And we reprocess to a place of.
It is like I remember thinking like, oh, what is he gonna do? Put me under like a hallucination of some sort? But it is very like beneficial. I found we would do like a point scale.
Yes.
So where are you now? I'd be like, oh, I'm at an 8, and he was. It takes a lot. It's very tiring.
It's tiring.
It's very exhausting. I found, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this type of therapy, and then I'm going to go for a walk. And it's not that at all. It's, it's, you're opening up these new ways of thinking in your brain essentially, and what you've been blocking. And I'm actually starting brain spotting again this weekend, which I'm really looking forward to, because again, I'm finding, I'm getting stuck with certain parts with the trauma of Gwendolyn, whether it be like a procedure or the day where she passed away. And I'm just, it almost like I'll be driving and I'm like, okay, no, like redirect yourself, Tamara, don't go there.
Right.
But that's quite literally what it will do. And it will control you if you don't get a hold of it.
Absolutely.
So it is. I'm a firm believer of this type of therapy.
I have seen so many incredible things through EMDR.
And it's newer. It's a newer type based therapy, right?
It's been around for probably 30 years, but I feel like it has grown in its practice. I find that I'm using it more and more and more.
Yeah.
And it's quick. Many clients, they will think I'm going to be here forever.
Yeah.
And we can work.
How do you guys feel after that? Like if it's really draining for the people involved, like do you feel good after it, or do you feel like that? Or
I love EMDR because I see the growth and change in like one session.
Right. Which is probably really not often that you can see that so like instantly in therapy, right? Yeah. It probably takes much more time. It's funny to listen to you explain EMDR being so physical when I suffer from a lot of anxiety myself and I experience it so physically, and it's just crazy to think how the mind can manifest so many physical symptoms.
Absolutely.
And then bringing in forms of therapy that can then
mind, body, and soul
use the body to help heal. So
and that's what I would say the best part of EMDR for me is it's integrating like mind, the body. So it's like, where are you somatically?
You're labeling, right? Where you feel that. Where is that going? Yeah.
Connection. It's the word of the word of the day.
Word of the day.
Yes. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Do you do that one too? We talked about it a little bit.
I don't do EMDR. Although brain spotting is an interest area.
Cool. I need to hear about brain spotting.
I'm trying it Saturday.
You told me about it, but I know nothing about it.
It's actually
it's quite similar in terms of like bilateral stimulation. There's a different focus point to help you kind of go a little deeper.
And that's where I have to go, is a little deeper.
Yeah.
So I told my partner, I said, write me off, because
I mean, we talked about this last time, but therapy is draining. And I think even for us as clinicians, right, we need to be mindful of that. And we try to plan our days so that we, if we know that it's a particularly heavy session coming up, doesn't always work out that way though.
Yes.
But
intention.
We try.
But you have each other.
Yes. We have each other.
And I think that when I have a really heavy day, I will look for Cassie. Sometimes I see her door ajar and I'm like, it's just,
I just need to come in and sit.
Just sit for 2
I love that.
So what is this comes to mind now that you said it like that, like when you guys are having heavy days, like how do you practice self-care? How do you guys take care of yourselves and your minds, or things that you guys are going through personally as well, while also carrying, some sort of mental and emotional weight from other people?
I think that can go for a lot of frontline workers too. I mean,
absolutely.
What does self-care look like? How do you practice it? How do you prioritize your mental health?
We're big supporters of a lot of the local coffee companies.
Absolutely. Yes, we are there a lot.
I think maybe removing yourself from the environment. I know if I have a stressful day, I have to just kind of go for a walk, remove myself from the environment to kind of fresh perspective.
Yeah. I feel like my treadmill is my equation of how well I'm doing. So if I am on my treadmill 3 to 4 times a week, I'm doing okay.
Great.
I also know that if it's heavy, I try to balance my days. So I will have clients that I'm doing maybe just anxiety work, and then I will have somebody with, a pretty significant trauma that will be unsettling to me that I'm going to need to regulate, then I might have a break. So I try very hard to.
That's great. And I'm sure that's taken a lot of practice for you guys to both get to that as well, in terms of knowing how you're going to respond and how to still take care of yourself.
And we both do tons of clinical supervision. I think we both have, and then like therapy ourselves. I'm not a stranger to therapy myself. So whatever it takes.
Yeah. I think it's a diverse practice to take care of yourself as a therapist. Absolutely. And in any helping profession. And it's a learning curve along the way for sure. But I think we also are at a point where we both have some diversity within our practice with teaching and clinical supervision and workshops, that we can stagger our days a little bit. I remember my first year doing therapy, and I would never do this now. But just the way that it worked out, I was in a clinic in Trenton, and, didn't have benefits. So if I had to take time off, it was like, I'd make up the time elsewhere. Right. And so sometimes I would work 12-hour days, and you'd get like 2 1-hour, lunch breaks, but that's still 10 hours of therapy. And that was like a very quick,
and your commute
lesson learned for me. And I remember, I would call people on my drive home, and I was just so tapped out. And so I think you learn to pay attention to yourself too, and
driving without any noise
at your job as well, right? When you can show up and be clear-minded and be ready to to support, right?
And even our conversation last time, you both had asked about, how do you know, or like if a client isn't a good fit, and we really stress that with everyone that we see. Right. If this doesn't feel like a good fit, we respect that. We want you to respect that for yourself, but we need to do that too, right? And so paying attention, where if we're going into a session feeling stuck, feeling like we can't help the individual, if we feel like it's just not a good fit, we need to honor that too.
Children and things, I'm sure you have some boundaries set as well in terms of age limits and things like that, and who you is your preference to see.
Absolutely.
Of course, that's important. Those boundaries for sure. We talked about brain spotting. What is this next one? Somatic trauma therapy.
I've never heard of this one. Maybe I have.
Have you guys heard of it?
So this is more body work, stuff that we've been doing, I think, forever. But we are just finishing our actual certification in it to say that we're certified.
Oh, congratulations.
Somatic trauma therapists. But it's more tuning into like embodiment and that type of stuff.
Well, and we know that we carry trauma in our body. So that it really kind of goes back to like, if we know that trauma is carried around in our body, or, knowing what our gut does and our how our posture is, and a lot of the time we
self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Talking to me when you said that. I was watching Express with the kids the other day. Did you see that story with the girl on the train, and she's like, I was like, why are they showing me in this movie?
I did see that, but I didn't even put a connection in there. But it is, it's so important to become self-aware. And like when you what is that fancy word you used? Ruminating. Yeah, that's it. I just recently experienced a trigger with something, and it was like all week, and I was just so stuck on this, and I'm like, let it go. Like it's not going to matter, next week. But it was just holding in with my body, and I'm like, okay, now I feel like I'm lactose intolerant because my stomach hurts all the time. And it really wasn't that in the case. It was just the anxiety that I was holding, and I wasn't able to sleep, and it really is just it just sits there and just like fuels until it blows.
Yes.
And most of the time, so hard to get back.
I know that I'm like, for myself, my stomach tells me how I'm feeling before my brain tells me. So I have to tune in sometimes when I'm feeling heavy in my stomach, or when I'm feeling flighty in my, like the butterfly feeling. I will say, what is going on? What am I thinking, or what am I worrying about? Because
what's upcoming? What's coming? Going on? Right?
What's bugging me here?
Bothering me? I feel like it changes a lot. Like for me, it changes a lot because sometimes I get anxiety like through my chest. Sometimes
it's because of that nerve that's connected through the head. Right?
One time, like recently, like 3 months ago, I had to call 911 because I was having a panic attack, and my heart rate, I had 147, or sorry, not 100. I had 47 breaths per minute. That's how like hard I was breathing. And I was like, take me to the fucking hospital. Like, anyways, but it's so physical, but sometimes not for me. So it's crazy how much it can change for you too.
I remember hearing a stat not long ago or a while ago that 70% of all heart attacks brought into hospital are actually anxiety attacks.
Really?
Yeah. So people being brought in on stretchers into emergency departments.
Yeah.
It's actually panic
Really?
attacks. Yeah. So it's very.
I made them the first time it happened to me because it's not only been one time.
Did you do that? Yeah.
I begged them to give me an ECG. They
Yeah.
weren't going to, and I begged them. I was like, please, like, I genuinely, like, I was like crying because I'm like, I'm never going to see my kids again. That's how terrified and upset I was. And I was fine. I was not having a heart attack. I wasn't fine, but I was not having a heart attack, thank God. But like, that's crazy. That makes me feel more validated in that, and that I'm going to be like,
well, it's your fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
Your primal system that is telling you are in danger.
yeah.
There's a goddamn tiger behind me. I need to run.
I was just laying on the couch the last
you're
time.
laying
Like,
on the
I was
couch.
just doing nothing. Like, I don't know. It came out of nowhere. But anyways, okay, continuing on. We talked about cognitive behavioral therapy because that's what you guys have done a lot. Is there anything you guys want to add to what therapy looks like for you guys day to day, or what people can expect in terms of when they're seeking out therapy? No?
Well, I think just some of the stuff that we talked about last time with it being like you need to be ready.
Yes.
And it's okay if you don't know. There's a difference between being ready and maybe not knowing what you want.
Right.
Yes.
Right. You can maybe
that's a
have
good
this
point.
feeling of something feels off, but I'm ready to look into it.
Yep.
Yes.
Is different than something feels off and like I'll go and talk to someone, but I'm not gonna do the work.
Yeah.
That's
You need to really put in the work.
yeah, it is. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions.
Absolutely.
Is there's absolutely sessions where people come in and we might just talk the whole time and there might not be any homework, but then the next time you come in, there's like this implicit expectation that you've at least reflected on what we've talked about the last time.
And utilize, those tools too that you've.
Yeah.
Do you find that like the majority of people come seeking therapy for things in the past, or do you ever find that you're helping people sort through things for future, like whatever that looks like in terms of career or marriage or relationships? Do you find that that's kind of equal, that it's like past, present, future, or
It can be just so many different things. Like, thinking about life transitions.
Yep.
A lot of people like thinking about going to retirement and being terribly fearful of what is it going to look like going from working a full-time job to not.
Right.
Huge
And
life transitions.
it's
for sure.
huge.
I know for myself, I'm planning, for my future, and I'm going as well talking to my therapy about what it's going to look like, what may happen, what it's going to look like. Sorry guys, I'm not speaking close enough to the mic if you're listening. What it's going to look like, just preparing yourself, because it's always good to be prepared. There's never not a good time to.
I feel like that was a good question that I had.
That was really good. So we talked a lot about trauma. So and you said, I liked this. I seen this on your page. It's not always what happened, but what didn't happen.
Yes.
So if your needs weren't met as a child, or if your needs weren't met in a relationship, or
there's so much more that we know now, and this kind of goes back to the big T, little t dichotomy that I think we both shudder at a little bit at this point in our careers, with exactly that, right? Your basic needs maybe were met, but if you were a child maybe who was left alone every time you were sad or every time you were angry, that is going to have impacts on brain development and all of these things, and we know more about that, right? And so sometimes it's more about like not having enough of the good stuff.
And I found this in my relationship. Everyone talks about how bad the bad relationships are, and nobody really talks about the relationship after a bad relationship, how conditioned you are to think away. And so when you are in a good area, or more healthier state of mind, it plays tricks on you. And it's like, I went out without that for so long, so now I'm conditioned to think that way, and it's almost like I'm expecting that now.
I think it's just like distrust, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's all
that are around you. Even like parents, right? When we talked about like the alcoholic parent, but even like when you see like the dynamics of your parents, right? I find, whose alarm is that? What?
Sounds like that might be mine.
Oh, it's okay.
Is it mine?
It's not mine or
Stacey
over
there.
Go, Joey, go get it.
If it is, it's in my coat pocket.
It's 100%.
I was going to say there would be no reason.
I'm afraid to move this because I'm not going to get back in here.
Our first episode. Sorry, guys. The timer's going off. It sounds like an alarm. It makes me cringe
Like,
for the morning. The
what
alarm.
alarm?
Is that your morning alarm?
No, God, no, my kids are up before 6:45.
Oh gosh, before 6:45. Is it my jacket? Oh, there it is.
Is it an alarm going off?
It's not that one. It's yours.
It's mine. Okay, one.
Tamara. Okay, but what I was saying while she deals with that, what I was saying is that a lot of times I feel like, and I can kind of like speak and experience this as well, right? Like, you kind of can model like what your parents' like marriage looked like, or even how you, like in a relationship or in a marriage. And I find like you just grow to know, and even if it's not something that you want or something you agree with, you just kind of fall sometimes into those, I don't want to say like traps, but like, you know, into that behavior, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right? I have to mention something really funny today. I seen a meme of T Swift, and like we're all about T Swift right now.
No one is, because no one wants to come to the Eras 2 movie with me.
It's really good, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say you were just there with your kids not too long ago, right?
I'm gonna come with you and the girls.
Honestly, she was like in the background, and then like Blake Lively, I think, was walking, and it was like my counselor cheering me on for breaking generational trauma, and she's like, hey, you know, like, you go, girl. That's what it reminded me of it. But yeah, generational like routine, trauma, all of that stuff. That's juice. That's juice in there.
Naughty, nice, anxious cup.
Oh,
yeah. It's obviously anxious.
It's obviously ain't shit.
Okay, so yeah, we were talking about your relationships, the past relationship after. I had something else that I wanted to ask, but now I've forgotten based on that alarm. It's thrown
Sorry,
me
I know that was weird.
She's like blaming everyone else.
I think it might have been a reminder because I have to cancel my dentist appointment, and I don't want to get charged the fee of the 24 hours.
Yeah, I think
Maybe,
it's 48 hours.
Oh, well, sorry. Damn it.
It's 48 hours.
Hopefully they're not watching this.
Yeah.
Psychedelics.
Sick.
I want to talk about psychedelics.
Okay.
So just to make it aware, if you guys,
no one is experts in the psychedelics.
No.
At this table.
No, neither of us are trained in the use of psychedelics for therapy.
But in our society, it is
emerging. Yeah, it's emerging.
There's a lot of research.
We did talk about it last time.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think it's more just our fascination point is the whole impetus behind the use of psychedelics is unlocking really deeply repressed memories,
right?
Which happens with trauma a lot, and you know the potential to break through that with the use of psychedelics. But the interesting question is like, how do you work with what you don't know has happened?
Right. Okay, because
would you say it's like EMDR times 100 when if like you're on psychedelics and you're opening up those gateways of
I think it depends like
pathways?
Because there's microdosing, right? And then there's ayahuasca, so like where are you in there? You know what I mean? Like,
it's hard to say. I don't know that I could even put the equation EMDR beside psychedelics.
Right. They're probably their own for a reason, right? Like they maybe could build on another, but I mean, the reason it came up is because I always talk about what I've seen on Netflix, and we had watched the Goop Lab where they have an episode where they, Gwyneth Paltrow's team, and they go and do the mushrooms and have all these like profound like awakening experiences. And then there's the Zac Efron one that they do ayahuasca in Costa Rica, which would scare the shit out of me. Like, could you imagine?
Wait, is that where you go for like 4 days and you have
to throw up before?
Yes, it is.
You have to have nothing on your stomach, and they make you
sit with your emotions. Like, isn't it like for 4 days and you're just? Yeah.
I've worked with clients before that have returned from ayahuasca. Again, I don't know enough about what's happening at ayahuasca. But it unlocks a lot of the trauma, and then what we work on is unpacking and processing and understanding today, based on that learning, so I've done that before.
I feel like that could actually maybe even be like
sign me up
like a setback, right? Because you like maybe think that you have this expectation that you're going to do this, you're going to have this experience, and it's going to heal you, but then I don't know, like, is that always how it comes, or no, you have to come back and have therapy to
I think there needs to be the integration with the therapy. I think there's the process
like a one-stop
doing
shop,
the psychedelics, and then And I think, this goes into, again, nothing that we are experts on around epigenetics, but there's more research to show how far back, epigenetics generationally go that still impact us today.
Right.
And so it's like something from, for humans, I think the research is like 3 generations conclusively.
Wow.
But we recently just learned with glowworms, it's 14 generations. And so it's like, could it be more for humans?
So
maybe,
what does that exactly mean? So it's the trauma is in your genetics.
Break it down for her, Cass.
Like, talk to me
it's
like
a hard
I'm
one
5.
to explain. I always suck at explaining epigenetics.
Me too.
Essentially, it's like environmentally things that had happened that get stored in your historical filing cabinet, and they can be altered a little bit. So it's not like our genes that can't be altered.
It's like learning over and over and over,
and then it gets
being
passed
added
down.
on and passed on.
Right. And so
Like
if
an
you
onion.
are,
we love connection.
And so we, going back to the body work and the somatic work, we hold these things, right? And we don't always know what we're holding or where it comes from.
And it could be your great-great-grandma.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to ask
Grandma.
at the beginning when I'm like, why do I feel like this?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even me. Okay, that's super interesting.
No, let's not go there.
And this is something that you're currently, are you both looking into this more right now and studying
It was
this
just a new
more?
study released, wasn't it?
The glowworm study was 2017, I think. But it sort of sparks the conversation of, like, we always ask, tell me about, your parents and tell me about your grandparents.
Generational
just to give us a sense of what, what the bigger picture is. But, like, does it go back further? Is kind of the question, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, how do glowworms, like... I gotta read about this. We're gonna have to link this study because I'm curious to read it and understand, because I'm just like...
It is intriguing. When you told me that, when you mentioned it, was very, very cool to hear.
I'm gonna probably make a mistake somewhere along the lines here, but
it's okay.
Something about, taking them out of their natural environment, but they would, like, 14 generations later still glow in a different environment.
I see. Oh, okay. I understand.
Right. Yeah. And so it's like the environmental impacts that have been altered over time, what's sustained, what hasn't.
I see.
And how far back does that go?
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
And
wow.
The book I was telling you about, the
Sapiens.
Sapiens. Okay,
You told me it was Sapiens.
Yeah,
I've never read it, so I hope
correct
it
me
is.
if I'm wrong, but people will understand what I'm talking about. Sweet tooth, and the reason why the sweet tooth, it was established many years ago when we were Neanderthals, or if we believe that. And them saying that, they would, the reason why we developed such a sweet tooth for things is because of this underlying fruit that was available to them. And it would ignite those happy feelings, dopamine and all that good stuff in our brain. So
it was my great ancestor that created the sweet tooth.
Because Katie has such a sweet tooth, and I was like, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. It's instilled in us.
You never know.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Thanks, Roddy. I remember the question.
But they also gave us anxiety, like running from a tiger. So
right, there's that. I remember that question, but I just want to interject really quick and ask, because it was about, I was mentioning about, like, parenthood and those relationships, and I think about it all the time as a parent. So this doesn't make any sense to what we're talking about right now, but sorry. But so. I guess it kind of does, because it's genetics and things that we're carrying through. And, so now that I'm a parent, hearing that scares the shit out of me that now, okay, this is...
Katie, call 911.
Going to my kid. So, okay, I know that it's not realistic, but essentially I feel like my goal as a parent to raise my kids that they don't need therapy. And I've said that to you, like, when we first started. And, like, as a parent, I mean, with such a big focus on mental health right now, in this movement to, being mindful, and especially I feel like it's important everywhere, but especially I feel like for men and boys with their feelings and kind of normalizing those conversations. What advice would you give to a parent in terms of connection, relationship, establishing, I don't know, habits, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, like habits or systems in place, that is going to help support those relationships and those bonds for your children to be able to connect and be, like, healthy adults. I don't know. Yeah. Right? Like, is that a finished question? Okay, complete one. Okay.
What was our word of the day?
Communication.
Connection.
Absolutely. Connection. Okay.
And normalizing emotion. I think, again, I think I'm raising boys. I have 2 teenage boys.
You have 2 boys? 2 teenage boys? Aw.
I have 2 boys. And I think I'm a very like emotion-centered mom who talks from the emotional lens. And am I trying to raise my kids to avoid therapy? I hope
I shouldn't have said it that way.
No, I get it, but I want my kids to be at a place where if they need it, they'll go and get it because they're not going to be afraid and they're not going to be shameful of needing help.
Right.
And if they need it, I would want them. I hope that I've raised them that emotions are normal.
They can recognize.
And that there's always a way to work through things. So, I mean, that's my goal. I'm raising boys. Are they going to be like rushing and banging down doors of therapists? I don't know.
I think it's so attractive when guys
I shouldn't have said it that way because I didn't mean it that way. Hearing you respond that way, because absolutely, like I said, I just started counseling this week. I think that it's a great tool. I think that you've said it a lot. Like at any point, somebody at any point in their life should try therapy. Like it's just
give it a try. Yeah.
It can only be helpful, right? It can only be helpful. But I guess it's more so like I'm just so worried about like, am I doing this right? Am I doing parenthood right? Am I giving them the tools to be healthy, successful, happy?
Well, and talking about that too, I heard a really scary statistic the other day on the radio that isn't it like 70% of suicides are men?
I would imagine
it's higher.
It's very
higher for men because men feel so isolated that they can't talk about their emotions.
They're usually very like fact-based part of the brain where things are going good or they're not. Where women are more on the emotional kind of spectrum where they can kind of regulate a little, maybe or highly regulate, highly unregulated, but people are going to reach out.
Conditioning. And it's conditioning again.
And also the communication, especially between women, having those relationships that we can talk about things. I remember I was talking to, I think it was Dustin a while ago. Anyways, and he was like, Ryan and I don't talk about that stuff. And just, even my brother, like about the things that, him and his friends communicate with. I'm like, why are you talking about that?
Or like, why are you coming to me to tell me this? Like, do you not have somebody to go to?
Yeah, which is totally fine. Like, talk to me all day. But it's too bad that dynamic's not there.
Where you probably know me more than my partner does.
Yeah. Same.
Same.
I think the other piece, just going back to your question, Kate, about kids, you can't always control what they're going to experience either.
Right.
No. Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
And so you don't know what like the kids at school are going to say, or if they grow up, what they might witness that's way beyond your control.
I think
the two things are, if they have some of those experiences that are really difficult, going back to what we talked about earlier, if they can experience that in the presence of a supportive other or a supportive parent, that's going to fit really different than if they've experienced that and feel alone. And then the repair piece, right? Like, as parents, we're always going to make mistakes. I think that's something that we just talked about today, how much we normalize with people. Like, I do this for a living and I don't say some of these things to my kids sometimes, or I don't handle my anger well sometimes because I'm human too. And we can always go back and repair, whether it's with our kids, with our partners.
I tell them I'm wrong all the time and I apologize all the time.
But I think, and I tell you this and the other girls too, I think, it's okay to show emotion and like label it, because we're not always happy-go-lucky. It's that positivity, toxicity. Like, like we're just, let's all be happy, and that's just not realistic. So I think it's important for them to see those moments that, it's okay to
on the scale of
absolutely.
I guess like hearing both your response, and thank you for that,
because
it's more the anxiety of the things that you can't control, right, and the fear of what's going to happen outside, or bullying, or something said, or
all you can do is instill
and make sure that communication and connection is open. Good. Cool. Thank you for answering that. Thank you for answering that. I really appreciate it.
We all strive to be the good enough mom. The good enough mom is what our children need.
I know, and I hear often that saying that is like, bad moms don't worry if they're being a good mom, or I don't know what that saying is, right? Like, if you're worried about it, if you're thinking about it, then you're a good mom and you're doing your best. So
you're conscious.
Okay.
You're conscious of it.
Doing all right.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't get a page 2. Oh.
No, it's on the back. I literally looked and I'm like, do I have 2 pages of information? What was I doing? No, we talked about a little bit of shame and resentment.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love working with shame and resentment. Resentment, I mean, we all have it. And so I think I just want to put it like, let's just normalize that. You're going to resent people, even the people you love.
It's kind of like a bias. We all have a bias.
Yeah. Right. If you are a human, you are going to resent people. Brene Brown talks about resentment as jealousy. Right. And so it's like, if you get to go out and do these things while I'm at home, you know, doing whatever. And even though I want you to go, right, I might be a little bit jealous and I might resent that.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. I've heard that.
But it comes up, or, you know, I work a lot with parents, who might have, you know, high degree of anger toward their kids. And then there's a shame about that. It's like, I shouldn't feel this. It's my kid. I love them more than anything. But often our resentment toward our kids actually filters through resentment toward our own parents.
Really?
Yeah.
Say that again.
So our resentment, if we hold sort of high degrees of anger or resentment toward our kids, it often filters through.
Why would that be?
Because there's like this jealousy, if we want to use that word, around what we're maybe giving to our kid that we didn't get.
Didn't receive as a child.
Yeah.
So again, you're talking about the what didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Full circle moment.
That was good. I really like that. Yeah. So, okay. So allowing yourself to, that's true, because sometimes I'm like, yeah, like I am jealous that you get to go do this because I would like to go do that, but then I feel a little bit of anger towards you, and I don't mean to be resentful, but maybe I am.
Well, and I think it's one of these things like anger too, right? I mean, it, as I said before, if you are human, you are going to be jealous. You're going to be resentful sometimes.
I find that with kids.
Yeah,
like my friends, like, you know, I would never wish upon what I've been through.
Absolutely.
You know, even my partner having a child who I love more than a lot, but I could never, sometimes I'm like, it's unfair that she's doing things at this age that my daughter should have been doing too. You know, and I kind of get resentful of that.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of be mindful.
Yeah.
So there's resentment that is jealousy, but do you agree that there's resentment that is from like reoccurring anger? Like built up reoccurring anger? Do you feel like
it's in the anger family for sure?
Yeah. How does somebody like work through resentment? Like what are tools that people would work through resentment? How can that go away? Is it just being mindful, or is there
sometimes? Well, I would say the first step is definitely let's shine a light on it, because I think people feel so gross saying that they feel it.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel gross saying that. Yeah.
It's like, again, right, conditioning. That it's this big bad monster, and it's just like, you're human. You just you wish that you had that opportunity and you don't. Right? Or you wish that you got this and you didn't.
Because I feel like almost like saying you're feeling jealous is being selfish or being something ugly. Right?
And even jealousy, right? It's not jealousy that is terrible. It's sometimes what we do in the face of jealousy.
Right.
It's how we handle
I always say
jealousy.
there's jealousy and envy, like, because I feel like envy is like a healthy sister of jealousy.
Be more of the envy sister.
Add it to the thesaurus here of my catalog of explanations.
In emotion focused work, we do a lot of it's called chair work, and it does involve talking to an empty chair. So I like to just tell people it's super weird, but I love it.
Okay.
And so we use that to work through resentment sometimes, or there's other work like written and verbal work for anger and resentment.
Right.
And we can do that in EMDR sometimes too, where you do very similar. It's like, what would what would the self, or what would yourself now say back to that little girl, like yourself? It's not even like sitting to the empty chair, but it's the exact same philosophy of like, or what would you want to say to him now? Like, and he hurt you when you were this, what would you say to him? It's trying to take the power back.
It allows you the closure too.
The closure, and letting the emotion be. Sometimes people just repress the feeling, so they carry it around. Sometimes we let the anger, be angry. Let's be angry.
Let it out.
Like, tell me where that is. Let's talk it through. Let's bring that through.
Get mad for a minute.
Get mad. Let yourself be mad, and then we can start to process through it. I mean, I think emotions are, once we start to bring them out, I think some of the best sessions are messy. They're messy sessions, and as a therapist, our job is to create that safe space to just let it be ugly for a little bit.
It's really interesting, like the empty chair concept, because I guess like, from my perspective, it, you know, that feeling of resentment, it's usually aimed at somebody else, right? You don't just sit and feel resentful alone. It's usually about a situation or about a person involved. So that idea of that empty chair, you need to be responsible for your healing, right? So it's almost like you could have these conversations and you can say how you feel, and even if you are open about that anger that you experience, you might not get the resolve that you actually need because it's not heard or it's not reciprocated or whatever that looks like. So that's a really interesting technique, because it's for you, right? It's not to get a point across or to kind of have it go anywhere but for yourself. Does that make sense?
I think we talk often, and in this particular exercise with resentment, it is usually, if it's specifically resentment toward a parent or resentment toward a child, but we would never put the spiritual child in the other chair. So it always starts with the other with a parent,
right?
But it works on the foundation of, you know, do you believe that if your parent had access to a crystal ball and would know how this would play out for you, and if your parent had access to unlimited resources where they could get the support for themselves that maybe they needed, or they could get the support for, counseling on how to tend to your needs better, or they had maybe a different social system, or they had, unlimited financial resources that let them feel less stressful, right? So if they were fully resourced and had access to a crystal ball, like that's sort of the version of the parent that we would work with.
Okay.
Anyways, no one's ever going to come to see me after you air this, because they're going to think this is so kooky.
This is incredible.
I'm really my couch tonight.
It's really, and I had the same thoughts, when I did my training in EFFT and EFT, but it's really cool actually to see it unravel. Yeah. But there's lots of ways to work through resentment. I mean, it's a variation of anger, and somatically, right, it shows up as tension in the body and other things, but
you can feel it too.
I feel like though, like even though you're kind of disclosing some of your practices and how things are working for you, just knowing though to show up for you guys to be able to be support to walk through, because sometimes it's really hard for people to just have accountability. Like you're like, I'm going home to talk to my couch, but people are going to listen to this and maybe think that really resonates with them and think that could fit for them, but they do need that support, or they do need that guidance from you guys.
It's important too. Like, I mean,
do you,
Caitlin? Weirdo. But
change the ratings on this one.
Sorry.
Okay. Now you threw me off, and I had a really intelligent thing to say.
You're talking about role playing.
You're making me all flush.
You're talking about role playing.
Oh my goodness.
Where's I?
Let's talk a little bit more about toxic positivity. It's an interest of mine, because I hear it all the fucking time.
What does
with
this
grieving?
Mean? What
does it mean?
Toxic
joy.
Toxic positivity.
Joy.
An interest
all about
of
your perspective. 2 feet forward. Head up.
I misread this.
Better days ahead.
I misread this.
Is giving me a hard time, Joey.
I read toxic positivity. Any interest of.
No, an interest of mine, because I hear it. I think people who deal with heavy shit, it's like, head up, perspective. Your life is gonna get better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Everything happens for a reason.
Oh my God, that makes me cringe.
Yes. How many conversations do we have about this?
Oh,
That
probably daily.
Tell us some of the other ones that you hear.
Me?
Better days are ahead.
Yeah.
Better days are ahead.
Literally, though,
Like, it wouldn't happen to
everything
somebody
happens
who
for a
couldn't
reason.
handle it.
God gives their his hardest struggles to, his
the greatest
toughest
warrior.
people. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, do you hear Jesus Christ, do you hear yourself right now?
Yes.
Like, I just cringe. And I understand people are just trying to make others feel better in the moment. And when you're dealing with somebody that has gone through trauma, we know it's hard, but
We talked about this last time, I'm sure
reason.
we have, about other things to say, right? Other things to say. And this was something that Tamara brought up to me when she said you guys were coming.
Yeah. You had one.
She was like, what do you want to talk about? And she was like, okay, I'm going to do my 15 things. And I was like, okay. But I got a lot of questions in, so it was good. So I appreciate it. But one of the things that I was curious about, obviously Tamara and I are extremely close. And I mean, we've as a group of friends, we've all gone through some really heavy things at times. And I mean, I sit in these situations sometimes, and obviously that's not the right thing to say. That's not what you want to hear. But sometimes it's really hard to know what to say. And sometimes Tamara has had some really difficult moments, some lately, and I just don't know what to say.
So you just want to come over and
I say, have you called your grief counselor?
You do.
I do. I say that because
sometimes Tamara goes off the radar.
I
that's
say,
when we know
have you called your grief counselor? I don't know what to say. Genuinely, honestly, I don't know what to say. Sometimes it just feels beyond me, and I want to be supportive.
Can I tell you what I've learned?
You say, just be there for me.
Don't
and then
try
I'm
to
like,
fix it.
Yes.
Don't fix it for me. Just
absolutely.
sit with me. Just sit with me in the emotion. Don't try to fix it for me, because you can't fix it.
Okay, great. That's all I want to do is fix it.
Well, I think that's
and people, we want to fix everything.
Absolutely.
And we are in like a fix-oriented culture.
Yes.
Yes, it's like there's a problem, I have to fix it right now. But you can't.
It's a shitty circumstance.
The fix is that it never happened.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
It did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot, I've worked with grieving parents numerous times, and we always spend sessions on, sometimes it's just like that ability to say, I'm so sick and tired of hearing, you know,
she's always
better
with
days.
you.
Yeah, she's always with you. Stuff like that. Also, just even the people that say, if there's anything you need, just call me. You'll never call them. Yeah. And those are the kind of things we've been talking. I've got several people I'm working with right now, and I've thought, like, if I could unpack all of this stuff, we need a book for people to say, like, things you just don't say.
Yeah.
And we really should write a book.
You could do a really good Instagram post on that.
Yeah, we really do need to. But really, I think that sometimes what people need to hear is, like, I'm so sorry. Or
just acknowledgement of the situation.
And sometimes it's the simplest, just...
The best thing I ever heard was, fucked up things happen to really good people, and there's no reason behind it. It's just really fucked up. And sometimes things happen and there's no reason. They just happen. Not always. And I was always looking for an answer. Why'd she die? What happened? What happened? What could have gone wrong? And trying to look for somebody to blame, or I didn't want to surrender to her death.
But never.
And somebody's like, sometimes there's just not a reason. It just happens.
Yeah.
And that is the hardest thing to accept as a person, I think, because we always want an answer. Yeah, we always want to fix it. And really, there's just nothing. There's nothing.
We want the answer to the why, and there's
to the why,
and there's no
we
answer.
Always should, and really, there's no answer.
There's no answer. Yeah.
That's true. Yes.
Just I think trying not to put a silver lining on it.
No.
Right?
Yes.
It's I think especially in the face of losing a child or losing a loved one, it's like they're in a better place, or they're where they're meant to be, and it's like
they should be with
those
me.
ones. Yes, exactly right. Yeah. And it's like I think those elicit more anger than anything.
And I again, to this, I'm so sorry for your loss. Well, why are you sorry?
Yeah.
You didn't do it.
Yeah.
But again, as we're just trying to be there, and I know these good people are just
have great intentions. Right? Everybody has good intentions,
but sometimes it's just,
that's why it's a good conversation to have, because I feel like too, when we did talk about this, I'm sure we did, or we've talked about it on the podcast before, because I know, like, you've been so great and, like, accountable for, like, immediately, like, going to therapy and doing all the things that you can do, even ready or not. You were just showing up for yourself to feel good.
I knew the moment it happened.
And I'm, like, on the sidelines, like, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, because we have such closeness. And also I'm like,
the best thing that you've really ever done with me is, like, you'll call me and you're like, you know what, I'm having a really bad day. I really miss Gwendolyn. And you'll cry with me. And we'll just cry. And I'm like, that's what I need. I need people to miss her the way I miss her.
And
people to talk to her.
And also I think too, not be, like, fearful of the conversation, because I remember too, like, just the conversation that we had. It was really like hard, and I was so like careful about my words that we were choosing, and
I don't really remember.
And even just like, you know, bringing my own kids, you know what I mean? Like that was really like tough to like, you know, if I'm like, hey, like I gotta go now, but I'm gonna be back, but I gotta go because like I'm, you know what I mean, or whatever that looks like. So I think I do agree with you that I think that's a really healthy thing that has also, you know, been good for us, that we can share those moments together as well.
Yeah. What you just said, I think, is so key, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Tamara. But I've had, and I'm sure you've had the same clients, you know, in grief, and whether it has been, you know, a loss a month ago or 10 years ago,
right?
And that awkwardness, right, where people either don't reach out because they don't know what to say, and they're caught off guard because they're the people that they might expect would have reached out, right? And it's this fear of saying the wrong thing. And I think sometimes just saying like, there's simply no words for what you're going through, you know, but I'm gonna show up and be here with you.
Just remember those days. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing as a parent is your child to be forgotten. That was the most terrifying thing for me. And I think I find a lot of, you know, purpose in the Gwen effect, because her name is alive. But I really feel for a lot of parents who just feel that their child has just been forgotten. And I know what that feels like, because when she did die, a lot of, you know, I didn't hear from her specialists. I didn't hear from a lot of the community her community that was so involved, not because they didn't want to, but because of upper management. Didn't allow them to, but you know, so instantly you're there, and then you're gone, and it's such a weird dynamic. But I think, it's just like, I mean, Halloween. I again, you think, oh, it's Halloween, but I was bedridden, and I was like, you know what? I've been through this. Like, I got it. I did it last year. I can do it again. And it's like, no, I can't. And I had friends that like just checked in, like, hey, thinking of you today. And it's true, because it's a very, once again, you envy, you have resentment, and you're like, I should be doing that. You know, I was that for 2 years, right? So I think as a parent who's lost a child, can speak for a lot of people, our biggest fear is our child being forgotten. I love talking about her. I love talking about everything, and I love talking about my grief, because it was all the love in the world and nowhere and it, you know, it started with love. So that's that. And I think why I love my therapist so much is she will cry with me, because she's human. She's human, and she's always like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm crying, and but it's like, how do you not?
But they're
if you really have heart, then how do you not? Right?
I don't know. I never cry, so I don't know.
Well, you do. You mask it with humor. Like there.
Like what?
See there. We're stripping her away, guys. We're stripping her away.
She sent me this thing on Instagram that was like something along the lines of like, I don't even know. It doesn't.
Dealing with humor, but people do.
And I was like, yeah, I wrote this, Darcy. Why are you sending it to me? I was like, it's a screen background screen on my phone.
That's good though. Like, how can I help someone I care about with trauma and grief and emotional distress and addiction? How can we help people with addiction? If we have a loved one that is going through addiction, what would be something that we could do to help support them? It's so hard.
Did you guys see? You said you have worked in this field previously, so that sometimes hits differently.
I simply go with, it is not to simplify it to just seeing it as an addiction. It is so much bigger than that. There is something that they're trying desperately to numb.
It's like one of those 4 things that
it is one of those things. It is an escape. So I always I think I did addictions very well and continue to, because I never look at someone and go, why are you doing that? I look at them and go, what happened? What happened? And I mean, so I think that my compassion for people with addiction is strong, and I love working with it, because I want to find out the whys. What is it that you start to feel when you need to use, or what are we staying away from? What is that feeling? What happened to you? And when you start to really unpack trauma, then you're able to get to the root. And when you start to figure out the root, then we start to find other ways to cope.
Right.
To blossom in healthier ways.
Do you feel like people can be successful, like removing themselves from addictive tendencies or, whatever that muse is for them? Do you feel like people can be successful in overcoming that and healing, but not dealing with the trauma? Does that make sense? I feel like every question I ask, I'm like,
tucking the trauma away.
Because I feel like
I think it's still the impacts of the trauma, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I always say, like,
so even if they don't go full bore into, I'm going to share my life history of all of these traumatic events, but you can tackle the impacts. I think the addiction is really a way to deal with the impacts.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you often see one addiction. So somebody might stop the one addiction, and you almost, as a therapist, we often say, like, sit back and wait, because something else is going to come up that is going to, if we don't look at the trauma, if we don't address the trauma, whatever was being numbed out and escaped from, it's
going to bubble up and show in another way.
Is going to pop up and be addressed through gambling or some kind of addiction, sex addiction, a lot of those things. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like addiction to me is trauma. And I can't see it any other way. And I feel that brings the compassionate way. I often say to clients, I get it. Like, not, I don't get it. But why wouldn't you want to numb that away?
Wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you want to numb that away?
I think, again, in society, we have that bias that, they're just some loser, having an addiction. And I'm like, you need to look at that core to that iceberg tip. There's a reason to that, why that person feels that way. And I think it's very important to, pick away again at that onion and get to really what's stinging that.
If we put a little, I often say, and I have quite a few victim services clients and clients in general that I have worked with over years and years, that their lives are beyond horrific. You can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And then they're the most resilient. Like, so we go with, like, why wouldn't you use? Like, why wouldn't you numb that out? But look at what you're actually doing here, and here.
Right.
And I love seeing clients that have addiction, because under there is a story and some compassion that would be so helpful. I think sometimes just giving them that.
Absolutely.
That reminds me of that book, the Oprah Winfrey book. I don't know if you've heard of it, but she was with a specialist. I forget his qualifications, but he was, it's not why are you like this? It's more or less what happened to you. Why are you like this? And what happened to you?
Yeah. That's like
I think
Dr.
we also need to broaden, when we think of addiction, we get so focused on
drugs
substance.
and alcohol. Yeah.
Restrictive eating is an addiction.
Right.
Workaholism is an addiction.
I suffered with that.
Right. And so I think, but these are, workaholism, for example, is a little more widely accepted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It's still a way of dealing with or avoiding.
You're
avoiding or numbing, right? And so I think that it just speaks to what Stacey was saying too around compassion, right? It's like it's not about this person choosing to choose drugs. It's whether it's drugs or work or restricting your eating or purging. Yeah.
Do you find it
into an unhealthy
much
habit
harder to identify when it's not the obvious, it's like substance? Like, do people, if it is work, are people recognizing those behaviors on their own and coming in, or is that something that you guys identify often? Or
I think it's there's some things that are more widely accepted.
Yes.
So it is harder for people to recognize as maybe more problematic.
Right.
And I often do a lot of and I know there's trauma. I will often kind of pick away at, how are you numbing? If I don't know it,
how are you avoiding
that? Because that must be really heavy to carry around.
Right.
And then I will do some psychoeducation about what it might look like. And sometimes people will go, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. Or
but
what
that's
I'm
your job, and that's
because
why you guys are good at your jobs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes it's just like illuminating a situation, and the client may say, I don't want to touch that. So I have a lot of clients that will say, you can help me with my addiction to meth, but don't touch the pot. And I'll say, cool, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So it's not all, and sometimes people will say, I don't want to quit. Okay. What do you want it to look like then? Or what do you want? How do you,
how can
what
we
would be better for you?
try to work towards a healthier goal?
Yeah. So the goals are not what people would perceive as abstinence.
Yeah,
it's sometimes harm reduction and
what works for them.
And a celebration of getting them to a place that they're happy with.
Yeah,
I
think that's why therapy is important as well, because I think that people need to know that it's not black or white, right? It's not black or white. It's not going to be all the same. And what might work for you might not work for me, or vice versa, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you guys so much for sharing all that.
Now, before we wrap up, I did want to talk a little bit about utilizing self-help tools and benefits to each one. So why is it so important for us to self-soothe? Would you say? Why is...
Because we're all little babies.
Well, I think just our emotional systems are what drive everything, right? And so we all have this, sort of safe zone where we can, access better problem solving.
Is that window of tolerance?
Yeah, window of tolerance,
totally.
neuroception of safety, right? And even if in that we have, our peaks and valleys, but our ability to self-soothe essentially gets us back there, right? And so whether that is revving down or revving up to get into that zone, it's something that we all, we all need. Would you add anything?
I think with every single client, there's not many of my clients that ever come to see me that don't get taught very early on the 4 elements, which is teaching them diaphragmatic breathing, whether it's box breathing or some kind of breathing that works for them. Teaching them to ground themselves with their 5.
So important.
And then using the saliva glands, getting those saliva glands on, because a lot of time if we have gut problems,
Tell me
about that one.
So the saliva in our mouth. So when we go into fight or flight, our bodies think we're ready to run or fight. So what we do, or what happens, is the saliva glands will turn off in our mouth. So our mouth will dry, which will then just leave the gut with the food and the stomach acids. And we often don't turn them back on again. So you will get stomach acid problems. You will get acid reflux. You will get IBS symptoms.
I've started getting reflux.
There is so many. So if you just periodically check into your mouth and see if you've got saliva, throwing a piece of gum in, anything like that.
We're all like swallowing.
I'm chewing my gum extra hard right now. I forgot I had it in there. Sorry.
But I often say, be really mindful to turn, and I do this now all the time. I do it to my poor kids. I'm like, just make sure there's saliva. They're like, okay, Mom. They know what it means.
Like, Mom,
Stop.
High school drop off.
Saliva in your mouth, kiddos. God, they would die. I would die.
This is a rated R episode.
Yeah, totally. But it's so important. And then I always teach the butterfly hug, bilateral stimulation. Those kind of things just to calm the fight or flight activations, making sure the system is calm, centered, in a place that it believes it's safe.
I always sniff my essential oils.
Absolutely. Totally.
That's so funny.
Yes.
Yeah, this is interesting. When I used to smoke a lot of weed when I was in high school, sometimes I would lay down.
We were potheads in high school. I need to.
And then I would just do this unconsciously, and then I'm like, but I was so.
But you were doing.
Yeah,
you didn't even know it.
Yes. There you go. It's
throw a tap in there and you got it all made.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Thank you for sharing that. The saliva thing's so cool. I've never heard of that before. So
I've been doing a lot of research around that one because
that's good.
It is. Yeah,
it's easy.
It's so easy.
It's such a
crazy how physical all of these things.
Yeah,
all
we're all connected.
It's crazy to me, and everywhere,
body and soul.
Okay.
On that note, just 2 really great resources, because we didn't. This conversation flowed really well tonight around somatics and body. Yeah. The Body Keeps a Score talks all about trauma and how it gets stored in the body.
Yes. What is it? Sorry.
The Body Keeps a Score by
Basil Vanderkott.
Is that a book? Sorry.
It's a book. Yeah, and it talks all about how we store that, right? And Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No.
Amazing.
Again, it's a really cool book.
Find him on podcasts. He is you will love his podcast.
Excited.
I can do podcasts.
Listen to me. I'm like a little kid on Christmas.
It's super interesting. He goes through sort of chapter by chapter and looks at consistencies amongst people who've been diagnosed with breast cancer, MS, or diabetes,
autoimmune diseases,
autoimmune diseases, and just underlying stress factors. And it's not to say that these are causes,
right?
But it's like these things that might be existing already, and then they are tapped into further when you look at some of these emotional or traumatic consistencies.
I think maybe I heard on a podcast, and it's just like sparking something in my mind, but there was somebody mentioning that women who are more under stress are more likely to get ovarian cancer.
Probably.
Higher. Yeah. And I was,
because it's like all stress hormones, right? Stress hormones.
Yeah.
3 hormones in a whack. Reproductive cycle. I'm not a doctor, but
well, no, I mean, there was lots of really great discussion about that tonight, and we both always reference these books in our sessions.
Cool.
We talk about them. So they're really.
I will
really
give
great
that
reads.
as homework to clients, like listening to a podcast on Dr. Gabor Mate. There's one with the girl from, she was Blossom, so I'm showing my age, and then now she's on
Amy from Big Bang Theory.
And
now she's on Jeopardy.
And so she does a podcast, The Breakdown. I think it's called The Breakdown. She interviewed Gabor Mate. It is an hour interview, but it is so good.
Awesome.
It is so worth your time.
okay.
Yeah, I love it.
I can't wait. I'm ready. I'm gonna go home and talk to my couch and listen to this podcast.
Yes.
No, but really though, I'm going to
Leave you.
That was really good. So again, like there's so much helpful information, but we need to wrap it up because Joey's telling us
We need to know
wrap
how
it
to
up.
be able to connect with you guys.
Maybe we need a part 3.
We need to.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Yeah.
No,
Every
we just
week, every
we always
Wednesday.
had such
Part
good-
5.
We really had a really good turnout from your last podcast, and
Yeah.
I found it really beneficial. So it's just really wonderful to have you both on. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And guys, we will link their Instagram handle into our podcast, Joey, for you guys to find them. They were wonderful. And be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube channel, and also tune in to Spotify as well. We are found on there too.
Cool.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.